Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Turn your attention to the stage, and please welcome the Executive Director of the Wireless History Foundation, Liz Maxfield.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to the 2015 Wireless Hall of Fame dinner. If you could please locate your seats, we will get underway with tonight's program. I want to thank you all for being here. We are so pleased that you've all been able to join us this evening. I hope everyone's enjoyed the chance to connect with old friends and colleagues and to enjoy the various receptions breaking out around the hotel, and that you've had a chance to enjoy Las Vegas. We are especially grateful for the wonderful turnout for this year's dinner, and I hope that hasn't made it too hard for everybody to find where you need to go. We have a record number of sponsors this year, and of course, the dinner would not be possible without their generous support. We have a number of new sponsors, and to our new sponsors, please let me say welcome, thank you, and we hope to see you again next year. And to our continuing sponsors, and there are very many, thank you for your ongoing support. I would especially like to recognize this evening's bandwidth sponsors, AT&T, Berkshire Partners, Crown Castle, Eagle River, PDV Wireless, and Verizon. I also would like to acknowledge our Spectrum sponsors. Thank you all very much for being with us. We're going to give you a good workout here. Our Frequencies sponsors, and there are many. There we go, yes. And our Connection sponsors. I cannot emphasize enough how much their support means for the Wireless History Foundation, and please join me one more time in acknowledging their support. I'm standing between you all and dinner, so I'll be brief. I have quoted Emerson before during this dinner, that all history is biography, but that's only part of the story. It's the combined biographies of teams that have, as well as those of individuals, that have propelled the success of the wireless industry. As we've gotten to know this year's honorees, each one of them has highlighted the importance of coworkers, colleagues, and even competitors in the trajectory of their careers. And each of us here has been part of a larger effort at one time or another. And these experiences combined are the story of wireless. We look back at something that happened 5 or 10 or 25 years ago, and we ask, can that project or that deal or that event have made such a difference? And most often the answer is yes. You are weaving the history of the industry right now through the work you do. How you spend your time every day makes a difference, and we are delighted that you have chosen to spend this evening here. Please enjoy your dinner. We will be back afterwards to get the rest of the Wireless Hall of Fame program underway, and thank you very much.
Good evening, and thank you all for being with us here this evening. I want to, again, express our gratitude to you for joining us this evening, and thank you for your support of the foundation. As you may or may not know, this is the major fundraiser for the foundation. It's the thing that keeps our mission going. And in case you don't know what our mission is, I'm going to, now you can all kind of groan about this, use a little bit of PowerPoint to explain it. Okay, enough groaning. The foundation really has two missions. One is to do what we do here tonight, which is recognize people who have made a significant and measurable contribution to wireless. And so that's one of the things we do, and it's also the support mechanism for everything else that we do. The second thing that the foundation is all about is building what we call a virtual museum. And you've heard me talk in previous things, if you've been here, about what parts of that virtual museum are. But I'd like to spend just a minute tonight to kind of outline what we see as the vision for the Wireless History Foundation's virtual museum. So we've talked a lot about the Digital Archives project, and some people here have contributed written materials, photographs, other material to the archives, and those are in the process of being digitized and will eventually be indexed and put online for people to access directly. So kind of at the core of what we do is digital archives. And those are actually the easiest materials for us to access and index because they're everywhere. The second part of what we look at as the virtual museum is the wireless timeline. Now, whether you know it or not, there are lots of people in this room who have contributed to the wireless timeline by contacting us and giving us their view of significant events in the history of wireless. And that view is being consolidated into this kind of running timeline that can be accessed so that you can see how the industry developed over time. And the third part of what we're doing is what we look at and do today in terms of the histories of the industry through the eyes of the people who participated, both folks who were part of the Wireless Hall of Fame and those who aren't. And we've been putting additional emphasis over the past few years in terms of gathering more and more of those oral and video histories of what has happened through the eyes of the participants. So our goal for the entire museum is to link these things together. So one of those linkages might be the case where we have a major event that is anchored by the materials that surrounded it or reported it or contemporaneous reports of what went on, as well as interviews with some of the participants in that particular activity. So what we're doing is knitting all of these various parts together to build along the timeline the history of wireless. So I'm pleased tonight to say that we have acquired a major anchor piece for the Digital Archives project in the form of the CTIA archives. Those will be, and thank you, CTIA. Those will be digitized and in collaboration with several academic institutions will be indexed so that they are accessible online and so that they can be related to the other artifacts that happen to be in the museum relative to those events. And that's all possible because of your participation here tonight. So since you fund the foundation, you fund the timeline. And you're really helping us build that history, so thank you. Now, once again, this is open to everyone. We don't really particularly care where source material comes from. We are working with some other organizations on additional audio and video material that they've gathered over the years. But if you personally or your organization has materials that they want to contribute to the archives project, regardless of the type of material, we're open to it. And all you have to do is contact the foundation through Liz or Linda or even me, although I'm not so great at following up. So, but we do appreciate your support. And again, we thank you for being here and supporting the mission, the very important mission of collecting and maintaining this history for all. So thank you. I'm standing between you and the honorees, and I really appreciate your attention to the slideshow. Thanks.
My favorite movie is Black Stallion.
People may be surprised to find out I'm a Pixar fan.
Actually, I have several favorite movies. I'm not sure which I would pick.
The photography is beautiful, the story is beautiful.
Groundhog Day.
Toy Story, we just saw Inside Out.
It's a Great Life with Jimmy Stewart.
Maybe makes me feel like a kid again.
John Wayne and Sands of Iwo Jima.
I like the whole James Bond series. When you look back at some of the gadgets in the earlier movies and then what's occurred with technology as time has gone on, it's pretty amazing.
Ladies and gentlemen, Wireless History Foundation board member Charlie Townsend, CEO of Aloha Partners.
Thank you. When most of John Kelly's friends graduated from Purdue University in 1980, they went to work in glamorous jobs on Wall Street and in Silicon Valley. John went to work in a seemingly unglamorous job for an independent phone company called GTE. John quickly moved into GTE's newly started cellular division and was given responsibility for building and launching the first cellular network in San Francisco and San Jose. At first, John thought that cellular phones might be limited to being toys for the rich and famous in big cities. However, that all changed on Tuesday, October 17th, 1989, when the San Francisco Bay Area was rocked by a 6.9 magnitude earthquake. Power and landline telephone service went out in many parts of the city, but GTE's cellular network survived the quake. John and his operating team proved that during emergencies, cellular service was essential for communications for both public safety and consumers. In 1990, I was fortunate to be able to lure John away from GTE to help me start Atlantic Cellular as our president and chief operating officer. John and I both believed that cellular would be equally as successful in rural areas as in the big metropolitan markets, like San Francisco. The first license that we acquired was in Hagerstown, Maryland. I can still remember when we flipped the switch in the fall of 1990 and waited for a flood of customers. We waited, and by the end of the first week, we had 2 subscribers. I was beginning to think that maybe we were wrong and that cellular might not sell in the rural areas. But John calmly turned to me and said, "If we can't sell cellular service, the only thing left is to give it away." John was certain that if consumers tried cellular service, they would like it and continue as subscribers. So we offered free unlimited service through the end of the year. By New Year's Eve, we had 40 customers and Atlantic Cellular was off and rolling. When we sold Atlantic Cellular in 1998, John went to Crown Castle, USA to be President Chief Operating Officer. Under John's leadership, Crown Castle quickly expanded and in 2006 acquired Global Signal, making it the largest tower company in the United States with 22,000 towers. Today, John is Advisory Director for Berkshire Partners. I am so glad that John took that daring step when he graduated from Purdue and decided to join the cellular industry instead of going to investment banking. He has made a number of significant contributions to our industry, and we are fortunate to have him with us tonight.
I'm one of 6 children that was born internationally. My father worked for 2 different engineering firms, ultimately coming back to the U.S. During high school years, and that was just outside of the Boston area, and then ended up at Purdue University. After college, I was fortunate to have been selected by GTE Corporation that had a management training program. And so I had 3 different assignments over an 18-month period before then being ultimately placed in the Bay Area. I was made aware of an opportunity to join this new division, GTE MobileNet. We were just starting it up in 1983. I've been in wireless ever since. Over the course of that next 2 years, we built the network, and we're very proud to be the first providers of cellular telephone service in the greater Bay Area. I was running GTE's Pacific region when on October 17th of 1989 was when the San Francisco Giants were playing the Oakland Athletics in the World Series. And at 5:04, for those people that were actually watching the game, the Loma Prieta earthquake hit. We immediately knew that this was a big earthquake. It lasted for quite a while. And there were some AM broadcast towers that were in the vicinity of our building, and the tops of those towers had collapsed. Went right back to our headquarters in which our Bay Area switch was located. LED indicators on the switch that tells you how many of your channels were in use on any one of the various different cell sites that we had in the Bay Area, and they were all lit up. That reinforced for me that what had been an exciting industry was made that much more exciting because it was changing the way we lived our lives. It's what led me to ultimately accept a position in building out rural America. Atlantic Cellular was private equity backed. During my tenure there, one of our investors was asking what I thought about the tower industry. It's probably the least sexy aspect of wireless telephony, but a very important part of a wireless network. That investor and another investor asked whether or not I'd like to join the beginnings of what became Crown Castle. I was recruited to join as Chief Operating Officer of the U.S. operation to then grow that business through working with wireless carriers to help them create a more efficient balance sheet. There was no need for them to be building duplicative towers. In 2001, I was asked to take over as CEO because it was clear that what we needed to do was really focus on just operating what we had. And so Crown Castle today has some 40,000 towers. You can't have the kind of wireless services that we all want as subscribers without the requisite infrastructure built. Working with the membership of PCIA, there was a realization that the largest members, the paging carriers, were going to be taking a very different role. I was asked to be chair of that organization as we rebuilt the organization to be an organization focused on the national and state level regulatory issues associated with infrastructure. In my free time, there are two things I like to do. One is travel with my family, 2 children, and then boating. And when you're outside of sight of land, it puts a lot of things into perspective. It's a great release. It's something that we can do as a family as well, and so I really enjoy that. It really is unbelievable how this industry is changing lives. Particularly in those less developed countries, they're able to and do acquire prepaid wireless phone service that allows them to conduct e-commerce, mobile banking. We're seeing micro-insurance, once again, transacted through that mobile telephone. And we're just simply limited by our imagination in terms of what these devices are going to allow us to do going forward.
John, so please welcome the James Bond of the wireless industry, John Kelly.
Well, thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Charlie, for that very kind introduction. And thank you to the Wireless Hall of Fame Selection Committee for including me with the other esteemed group of inductees in the class of 2015. It's truly an honor to be inducted into the Wireless Hall of Fame, and I'm humbled by the prestigious pioneers of this industry that I'm joining. You know, I can still remember back in 1983 when I was considering joining GTE MobileNet, and my colleagues at GTE all thought I'd lost my mind. They told me, didn't I realize that this was a niche industry and would always be a niche industry, was never going to amount to much, and that the only way that you should progress at companies in the telecommunications field was to stick with telephone operations. Fast forward a few years, and after our industry proved every forecast to be woefully conservative in their in their forecast of how many subscribers were going to be enjoying and benefiting from this service. And I think people at that point quickly understood why it was that I so much wanted to be part of this industry as we were changing and would continue to change the lives of people that were using our service. You know, one of the great things about this industry are the dynamic people that we work with. And over the last 30 plus years, I've had the great honor of working with some phenomenal individuals from the early days at GTE MobileNet, as we were initiating service in some of the cities, to joining Charlie Townsend at Atlantic Cellular and helping build wireless in rural America, to joining my colleagues down here in front at Crown Castle as we were working on developing the shared infrastructure industry to better provide our carrier customers with the help in building out networks and communities across this country with the infrastructure necessary to enable the services we have, to working on the board of directors with a group at Assurion, a fantastic team that is continuing to pioneer an industry that is bringing peace of mind to wireless subscribers as their devices become an ever more critical part of their daily life. And then finally, my work today with the team at Berkshire Partners, an investment group that continues to look for opportunities domestically and internationally to invest in shared wireless infrastructure. I will tell you that these people that I've worked with have made the last 30 years, and some of those pictures remind me that it really has been 30 years. They've flown by. It's been just a tremendous journey, and I really appreciate all the relationships I've built over the years. One person that hates to be singled out, but I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you, is my wife, Denise, who is joined by our son, Michael. If it wasn't for their patience and understanding throughout the years, I don't think I would have been able to contribute what I've been able to in this industry. As all of us know, it's a very fast-growing industry, and it requires significant commitment, and it's been with the support and faith of my wife and family that I've been allowed to do this. I'd like to just simply thank Liz Maxfield and Linda Livens for an excellent evening, and thank you again for this great honor. I really appreciate it.
I always think of it as mobile. I still say mobile. I still say cellular.
Mobile. Actually, mobile.
Wireless.
Mobile to me is too constraining. There are so many different devices that are going to be operating within the wireless network infrastructure, and so that's why I like wireless.
Please welcome Wireless Hall of Fame member and XG Technology Chairman and CEO, George Schmitt.
Well, good evening, everybody. It's my pleasure tonight to introduce a new member of the Wireless Hall of Fame, known by her good friends as the Skirt. Known as the Skirt, and by some others of us as the Cat Herder. Because back in her day, she was able to pull together things that some of us men couldn't do inside of a big telephone company. First time I laid eyes on Susie about 30 years ago, I was in our offices in San Ramon, and we had this flock of swans that frequented the place and nested around our building. And one of my colleagues said to me, "Hey, look out there, there's the Skirt, Susie." I said, "Susie, Well, let me tell you what, those swans took no pity on a woman, picked on her just like a man and got her right where they goosed everybody else. And Susie learned how to put her briefcase behind her backside and make sure that they didn't get her good. I remember a meeting where we had, and I said to her one day, everybody, all the guys around here play a little golf. Maybe I ought to get you a set of golf lessons. She still only swims, doesn't play golf. But Susie was unique in that she did things that no other woman had done before her, everywhere that she ever went. Her husband, Darrell, her husband of 46 years, is not with us tonight, but he has a darn good excuse. He had open heart surgery 10 days ago, but he gave Susie permission to be here with us tonight, so we're delighted to have you here. But let me tell you a little bit about what Susie did, Sue has done in our industry. John, you may remember that you got your butt whipped a little bit by that other carrier in the Bay Area called Cellular One. Susie, at the time that John was running that GTE MobileNet network, was running Cellular One. And John found out she didn't take prisoners, she just won all the time. And she moved on from that to become a threat for people that worked with me. Because I would tell them, you know what? If you can't figure out how to do what I need you to do, I'm going to send Swenson over here to get you. And that even worked with the Germans, because they had heard a little bit about the skirt. After Cellular One, after AirTouch was acquired and became part of Vodafone and part of Verizon here in the United States, Sue became the Chief Operating Officer of T-Mobile, a job that she did very well, and I was very delighted to have her there because a big hunk of T-Mobile was the old OmniPoint company and VoiceStream and Aerial and PowerTel, and she did a magnificent job there. She left there and became CEO of Leap, where they really developed the part of the industry that we know as the prepaid industry today and made that work in a way that nobody else could have made it work. And now, even though she doesn't need the trouble, she is chairman of FirstNet. And many of you know that FirstNet is mandated to build the public safety network for all first responders here in the United States. She does it virtually for nothing because she thinks it's important that our first responders never have to experience what they experienced in New York on 9/11 again. And I don't know that she will turn around Washington, but I can guarantee you that there are a whole bunch of people in the Commerce Department and the State Department that look at her and go, that one is doing her thing again. So that's a little history of the skirt. She's been just a wonderful colleague for those of us in the industry, somebody who has most cojones than most of her male counterparts, and just a wonderful friend. And I'm delighted, Susie, to welcome you to the Wireless Hall of Fame. Sue Swenson, everybody.
Well, I was born in Bremerton, Washington, and was born to a military family. So immediately went to Japan and started my life in Japan. My father was still in the military, so we moved quite a bit, but ended up in Los Angeles. Went to San Diego State, and after I graduated, studied to be a teacher, actually. My husband actually got out of the Navy and was a coach at San Diego State, swimming and water polo coach. As a result, one of the parents at the club said, "Gosh, you don't want to be a coach your whole career, do you?" And he said, "Well, I kind of like it." So, well, there's this program at Pacific Telesis for management development. So he came home that night and said, "Hey, does this sound interesting to you?" I said, "It does." I took the test. That's how I got into telecom. So actually, I started at Pacific Bell, went to Pactel, went back to Pacific Bell, and ran a business unit at Pacific Bell for about a year. An opportunity presented itself to run a joint venture between AT&T and what eventually became AirTouch. And so I actually became the president and CEO of a joint venture that was headquartered in San Francisco. And so I ran that for 5 years, probably one of the best jobs I've ever had. You had two owners, AirTouch and AT&T, who were competitors with each other in contiguous markets. So there was a lot of freedom as a result of the fact that there were legal issues, as you can imagine. So it was pretty challenging, but actually probably one of the best times I've had. I got to try things there that you couldn't do in a bigger organization. You got to develop your own culture. I still hear from people today saying that was the best experience of their whole career. So I feel pretty good about that. Obviously, technology changes all the time, and Pactel was a proponent of a technology called CDMA. I was very involved with CTIA, co-chaired the technology committee with another colleague in the industry, John Stepka from Southwestern Bell. And so I represented the CDMA contingent, and he represented the TDMA contingent. And we worked with the carriers to really standardize what we believe to be a superior technology. And so I was at Pactel through that development period, and just prior to my return to Pacific Bell, the industry really accepted the standardization of that technology. So it was really an interesting time and challenging, but you felt very accomplished when that was actually done. So FirstNet, I was actually at the San Francisco airport and got a call from Sam Yin. And I hadn't talked to Sam for a number of years, and he said, gee, I'm getting involved in really an interesting project. Maybe you'd be interested. And so I said, it'd be nice to take all of my years of experience and do something really productive like that and good for the country. And I've been involved in it for 3 years. It's obviously very important for our country, but it's a very challenging assignment because just building a nationwide network, as you know, has been done by a number of companies, but existing within the federal government and abiding by all the federal government rules and regulations makes getting things done efficiently and quickly very, very difficult. So the fact that we've done as well as we have in the 3 years, I think is a real tribute to the team that we put together to make that happen. It's very important for our country. I probably was destined to be in wireless, and I tell people it was really swimming, which was a big part of my life. I started swimming competitively when I was 12. The very fact that somebody in swimming kind of connected me, I think it says it was fate, and I was intended to happen. I really saw wireless as obviously a replacement for the landline connection and really providing much more flexibility for people in their life. And I saw the mobile world really changing the way people lived and actually were able to balance their work life and their personal life. If we use mobility right, it can actually enhance the experiences we have as individuals and as groups of people. I think the thing that I really appreciate about my career are the terrific people that I've gotten to know. I've met some pretty interesting and terrific people, and I've learned from every single one of them. So it's been a terrific career, and the good news is I wouldn't change it for anything. I would do it all over again. Well, thank you. I appreciate being here tonight. I have to tell you, in my wildest imagination, I never expected to be nominated and inducted into the Wireless Hall of Fame. So I really want to thank the Wireless Hall of Fame folks and all the support from all the people through the years that I've learned from. All of you, maybe more than you realize. I've learned more from you than you can ever imagine. Tonight is really about the recognition of myself, Brian, John, and Larry. But I'd like to take a moment to pay tribute to people who made me who I am today. I think it's really interesting. We're all products of our young years and people we've worked with, and I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge those folks. Number one is my grandmother. My grandmother was an immigrant from Europe, and she was a single parent after her husband passed away when my mother was 12. She stayed single for the rest of her life, and she was actually a cook at my elementary school. Now, what she did, you could not do today. There's, I'm sure, rules against it, but when I was in the 5th grade, she had me selling milk to the other students during the lunch hour. So I said, well, what did I know? And then I must have done a pretty good job because in the 6th grade, I graduated selling hot lunches at the cash register. So obviously you couldn't do that today, but I can tell you that my grandmother had a big influence on me in terms of just my values and my work ethic. So obviously a big person in who I am today. The second person was my brother. My brother was 8 years older than I was. And he obviously had a very big influence in my life because he didn't like the name my parents decided to call me. So he actually gave me my name of Susan, and so obviously a big influence. And he actually took me around, as a big brother would, into different activities, and he always wanted to be a pilot, so he built model airplanes. And he took me out to the fields where he flew the model airplanes, and I was his pit crew. And he would always tell me, you know what, you can be whatever you want to be, even if you're a girl. So, I took that to heart, and I took him seriously, and so obviously that had a big influence on me. The next group of people who were a big influence were the parents of a good friend of mine from elementary school. The father was an educator and a principal. And I grew up in a military family, and I don't know how many of you grew up in a military family, but I was always told, children are to be seen and not heard. Some of you recognize that? So I lived my life that way until I got to my friend's house, and he said at dinner, I'll never forget it, I'm sitting at the dinner table, and he said to me, so Susie, what do you think? And I'm thinking, what do you mean, what do I think? So he had me express, what I felt about something, and so I can tell you that through that experience, because the mother had actually had polio, we had a very participative environment there, that every time I went to that house, I had to be clear about a point of view, I had the conviction to say it, and I had to have the guts to say it, and obviously that has pervaded my career. And then I can't go through the list without expressing the people that I worked with at Pactel, Pacific Telesis, Pacific Bell. As my video indicated, I was part of a management development program, much like John, and I had a number of jobs and worked for a number of people, and I learned an incredible amount about leadership and management. And honestly, I still use some of those principles and things that I learned today, and I wouldn't be the person I am today without those experiences. And I worked for some really great people, but just as importantly, I work for some really bad people. And so you learn a lot from good people, but you learn probably more from bad people about what you don't want to be. And every company has it, and you learn from it. So obviously a big important thing there. The last person, and George talked about it, is my husband. Obviously he couldn't be here tonight. He had open heart surgery 11 days ago. He's doing great. He was a competitive swimmer, so was I. And of course, he's walking around the house getting better. And instead of just walking around the house, he has to time it. He has to time it. So instead of just doing 2 or 3 laps, he has to see how fast he can go. But he's doing great, and he's really sorry he couldn't be here tonight. But I'm telling you, I had so many different jobs and so many different changes. Fortunately, he loved looking for new houses, so every time we got to move to a new location, I would go to work, he'd look for the house, and we'd be all settled in. So he was a big influence. He also was very supportive on my commute, because several jobs, as George said, I commuted to Seattle for a couple of years. I commuted to Los Angeles and San Francisco for a couple of years. And all he ever said was, please don't change your mobile number and just tell me what airport you're coming into. And I'd say, words cannot express the kind of support. As John indicated, you can't do it without the family supporting you, and obviously a big influence on who I am today. So I really want to thank you for letting me pay a tribute to those folks, because we are the people who are around us and who have influenced our life. I would not have been able to enjoy the successes that I have and do the jobs that I did without that support. I really appreciate being recognized, and thank you for your attention. Thank you very much. I really liked my Motorola phones. They were really pretty dominant, and they came out with some pretty neat phones.
I love the little Nextel phone, the first clamshell phone we had. My wife has one of them, and when she had to give it up, she was really destroyed. It lasted forever and ever.
They've all been good. They've all been good at their various different stages.
I came up through the BlackBerry world, and I became a Samsung. So right now I'm a Galaxy 6. As soon as my contract allows, I'll be a Galaxy 7 or whatever comes out next.
Now, please welcome Wireless Hall of Fame member John Stanton, Chairman of Trilogy Partnership.
Windows Mobile. I'm on the Microsoft board. Thank you for the one person from Microsoft here. I remember the day I first met Larry Movshin. It was December 5th, 1983. Now you might wonder, 32 years later, why in the world I would ever remember that date. Well, that date followed December 1st, 1983, where at a meeting at the Friars Club in New York, all of the big companies in the non-wireline industry got together to try to take control. Those are big companies like Western Union, MCI, for the most part companies that don't exist anymore. The following week, the little guys, including McCaw Cellular where I work, got together in Washington, D.C. to try to figure out what we were going to do about this big company alliance. There was an impressive, somewhat boisterous lawyer named Ed Tapich who got up and said we were going to sue those companies, take them all the way to the Supreme Court because they were going to dominate our industry. Sitting calmly next to Ed Tapich was Larry Movshin. Larry listened to Ed, listened to all of us, and then calmly put the deal together. That deal ended up enabling the non-wireline companies in the industry to compete effectively. I'd note, Larry, that at the time you and I were the two youngest guys in the room. We're not the youngest anymore, obviously. On a great night like tonight, I think it's important to reflect on our history, and Larry in many ways reflects that history. The industry today exists because of many people who fought hard, first fighting the government to get spectrum, people like Sherm Wolf, Larry Garvey, then fighting to put the business together, often fighting each other, people like Craig McCaw, Clayton Niles, George Perrin, Russ Harris, Dick Sherwin. But sitting next to those fighters at every step was a lawyer. And this industry has been blessed by a number of important lawyers who were the peacemakers that made things happen. To date, many of those entrepreneurs have been honored in the Hall of Fame. But only one lawyer has been honored, and that's Dick Wiley, who both served as FCC chairman and as a working lawyer. Larry, in many ways, represents, as he says in his video, the working lawyers that made this industry possible. There are many others that also are deserving, people like Barry Edelman, Arthur Bluestein, Russ Lucas, and Liz Maxfield, who I first met when she was a lawyer long before she ever thought of the Wireless Hall of Fame. But it's appropriate that tonight Larry be the first in this group to be honored. His career has spanned the entire history of the industry, from its original licensing and formation, through the battles over interconnection, through the rounds of consolidation, and through the digital industry that it is today. Larry represented with both diligence and creativity. Over the last 40 years, not everyone liked Larry's clients, but everyone loved Larry. In some sense, it's appropriate that I'm up here introducing him tonight. Larry never represented any of our companies. Larry always represented the broader industry of which I'm proud to be a part. Larry, congratulations to you, to Lois and your family. This is a wonderful evening, and congratulations on a wonderful career and a great honor.
I was born in 1949. Lived most of my life in Maplewood, New Jersey. My mother was a teacher. My father was a salesperson, and since I was in high school, I think I always wanted to be a lawyer. It drove me to make sure I stayed relatively clean in the various activities that I did. I went to law school at GW, George Washington University here in the district. My first job was actually in a small corporate law firm in Atlanta, Georgia. They had a small client, Rollins Protective Services, that was involved in a dispute with Southern Bell, I think was the name of the company in those days. No one else in the firm had ever had any dealings with Washington, and I was a junior associate. It was a small case, so they sent me to Washington. And that's how I became a communications lawyer. It was pure happenstance.
The federal regulatory environment is a very complex and ever-changing one, particularly for dynamic technologies like cellular and mobile and wireless.
Nobody really knew how the FCC would give out this spectrum. We thought that perhaps it would be similar to the way they'd given it out under radio or TV licenses. Throughout the early days of cellular, as it went through all the iterations, as the FCC kept altering the process, Larry Movshin was always in the middle of it.
I got into the cellular industry on the very first day of the applications, June 6, 1982, because our firm's client was the only one that had filed in all 30 markets. And that meant we had to go through 30 hearings, or try and settle 30 markets. Through luck, the late Bill Wheatley and Jim Dwyer, the late Jim Dwyer, who was on the other side of one of the hearings, decided that maybe it was time to try and settle these markets and avoid the hearings. They were costly, there was risk, and that was the original settlement on the non-wireline, what was called the non-wireline side. And I think we ended up settling 10 or 12 of those markets, which kept them out of hearing. And as a result of those settlements, we ended up getting into the second and third tier markets, which were the so-called Grand Alliance settlements. Graphic scanning pulled up with a moving truck worth of papers because your application had to have a number of engineering studies, a number of marketing studies, a number of other things involved, and they were literally file boxes for each market. So we had 30 markets. The FCC was overwhelmed with the amount of paper. Two large groups of non-wireline carriers individually recognized that there was probably a benefit to trying to settle. And we ended up creating what became the infamous cellular exchange, where we had a group of settlements, everyone had an interest, they had a group of settlements, everyone had an interest in the markets, and they all got together and started what was essentially a stock exchange of paper changes.
Felt a little bit like the baseball or NBA trading season would be, and Larry was one of the top general managers because he represented a company that had lots of chips.
Folks would show up in New York and they'd start essentially trading pieces of paper. We had to take all those trading slips, if you will, back to my office where my colleagues sat down to figure out whether or not that everyone had traded the right amount, and we got it all together. But over the course of a week or so, we actually were able to find that every piece other than I think 2 had been essentially fully settled. So there was a lot of issues that we were all with a wing and a prayer hoping would work, because the ultimate goal was to get this industry moving, and I'm glad to say we did. I'm amazed. I look back again, it's now 33 years since those first applications, and I'm sure no one who sat around and filed those applications could have expected it would be like this. We see today that a phone that when we first started was, attached to a car, now, thanks to our millennials and our young generation, it is the way that they communicate entirely. Well, anyone who knows me knows I have a favorite sports team. It's the Washington Capitals. I live and die by them, which usually means in April I die by them, or May, but they're going to get better. And when I'm not working, the likelihood is I'll be on a golf course. If I'm not at the beach in Hilton Head or on a golf course, I'm probably spending my time in New York with the grandchildren. They still love their grandpa, or Poppy as he calls me, as they call me.
Well, I think Larry Movshin is a wireless lawyer's lawyer. I think he deserves all the honor he's receiving.
I'm proud to have called him a friend for more than 30 years.
The Hall's induction really is quite an honor for me to represent that the working lawyers have added value to the industry, and I really appreciate that. I'm quite honored by it.
They told me to be brief, so I decided, since it's totally outside my training, to actually be brief, to write some remarks. Thanks, John, and thanks to Dick and Mark for those kind words. I'm guessing I'm not the only one in this room who's wondering and was surprised to learn that Larry Movshin was being inducted into the Hall of Fame. I look at the Hall members, and I never invented anything. I didn't create a great company. I wasn't a great business leader. And so I've spent many months since Liz Maxfield called me to tell me I was inducted to figure out what makes a 40-year legal career Hall of Fame worthy. Well, a successful legal career clearly requires great clients. Clients with moxie, desire, and vision to see the industry not for what it is, but for what it could be. And I've been truly blessed with literally hundreds of loyal clients over my career who trusted me with the opportunity to advance their ideals for advancing the wireless industry. Folks like my good friend Dick Sherwin and the late Bill Wheatley at Graphic Scanning, who gave me my start and trusted me with the market settlements that I talked about and John talked about. Russell and Everett Dobson, who trusted me over 18 years through 3 law firms, and as you probably saw in some of the pictures, any number of weight gains and losses, to help them build Dobson Cellular from its rural roots into a large regional carrier. George Schmitt, George Tenney, and Lowell McAdam, who trusted me to help them create PCS Pioneer Primeco and get involved in the Spectrum auctions. I wish I could name all the clients, large and small, from the largest national carriers to some of the smallest rural carriers, who gave me the chance to fight the early interconnection and roaming battles, to help structure the industry's early debt financing and infrastructure purchases, strategic affiliations and investments in small entities, to work on virtually every auction that the FCC has held of spectrum, and to advocate in an incredibly long list of rulemaking proceedings at the FCC, but truly that would take many, many months and days. My career has also benefited greatly from the hard work and thought of many talented and generous colleagues, a number of whom are here tonight, a number of whom have been with me for literally almost 40 years. Far too many to name. I really do have to recognize my first senior partner and mentor, Joe Kittner, who emphasized for me the importance of having a touch of humor and a lot of creativity in finding clients a path to success. My former partner, Ed Taptich, who John mentioned, who brought me onto the graphic scanning team on the very first day of the applications, and then was kind enough to trust me in negotiating those market settlements. And to our firm's leaders, my current firm's leaders, Kathy Zackham, Andy Tolan, Brian Tremont, who've given me the opportunity to work over 20 years at Wilkinson Barker with the firm's talented attorneys and wireless industry clients on so many important issues. But a great legal career benefits not only from the folks you work with, but the folks you work against. And I've had a number of great advocates on the other side whose creativity has added to the industry. For example, I first met my friend and mentor Barry Edelman in 1983 as an adversary negotiating the settlement of the Detroit cellular markets. Barry and I helped structure many of the initial non-wireline cellular market settlements, including the Grand Alliance that John talked so much about, and later license swaps, all of which helped jumpstart the non-wireline cellular industry. But Barry and I are hardly alone in those efforts. I've worked with so many other practicing attorneys who've also enjoyed long careers, resulting in hundreds of successful transactions, countless policies and rules at the FCC, all of which have enhanced the wireless industry. It's truly gratifying to me that through my election, the Wireless History Foundation honors and acknowledges the value that the wireless bar has provided to the growth of our incredible wireless world. And I truly happily share this recognition with the many pioneering attorneys who have been in the practice, and I must say a number of them are also here tonight. Of course, a long legal career requires a lot of sacrifices from my family, and they have done that. My kids who are here tonight, Jeff, Eric, and Lauren, had to endure lots of birthdays and sporting events without Dad being present. And I'm not alone, I'm sure, for those who know her, in thinking that my wife Lois should be sainted, because she stood with me. Absolutely. Lois has stood with me for over 44 years of marriage, raised our children, and most times luckily without me, and endured lots of frustrating times, all because the law is a very demanding mistress, and certainly this industry can be as well. So I come to realize that a Hall of Fame legal career requires wonderful supporting colleagues, terrific clients, and a great family, and I wouldn't be standing here tonight without all of them. I have truly enjoyed practicing law in this incredible wireless industry, and I cannot thank the Wireless History Foundation enough for this wonderful tribute. I am truly overwhelmed and humbled by it, and I thank you all for the honor. Oh, I'm definitely joyed. But we are an interfaith family. My wife is entirely an Apple fan.
I don't like Apple. I really don't like Apple.
I have BlackBerry and Team Apple.
Team Apple.
Probably one of the reasons I don't like Apple is you can't ever fix your damn phone. You have to get a new phone.
Ladies and gentlemen, Wireless Hall of Fame member Morgan O'Brien, co-founder of Nextel Communications.
Thank you. My assignment tonight is brief but choice. I get to introduce the man who will introduce the fourth inductee, my dear friend and the rock on which Nextel was built, Brian McAuley. So joining us tonight to introduce Brian is a man that is known by the citizens of Delaware as an incredibly popular current governor for the last 6 years, but to the friends and family from Nextel and his many fans, Governor Jack Markell is known as the brilliant leader who for years worked at the forefront of Nextel. And the way I like to think of it is, with Jack Markell, he was constantly sitting in the front seat of the roller coaster, which was the terrifying experience of Nextel in the 90s. So without further ado, a man that, if everybody in public service were like this, what a fantastic world it would be, Governor Jack Markell.
You know, it's an incredible honor for me to be introduced by and to introduce two of the most important men in my life. And it's difficult to talk about Fleet Call and Nextel without talking about Morgan. Morgan changed thousands of lives for the better, and I'd all ask you to join me now in thanking him for his enormous contributions to this industry. Well, you know, tonight is Brian's night, and I want to be very clear that Carla and I traveled here tonight from Delaware for one simple reason, which is we love Brian McAuley. You know, besides being brilliant at finance and marketing and strategy and operations and human resources, and that's why we all thought that Brian would make a great CEO, CFO, CMO, CIO, and CTO all simultaneously. Brian had this uncanny ability to keep the rest of us motivated when gloom seemed to be on the horizon, and the examples are countless. When a very large telecom company, who I will treat for this purpose as Voldemort and Harry Potter, and I'll just refer to this company as the company that shall not be named, faxed over, so you know this was a long time ago, an offer to buy Fleet Call at 10% of the value that we expected. Brian saw only the bright side. He said it was a typo. It was not a typo. When Fleet Call's IPO fell apart in December of 1991, and a few hours later, Brian broke his leg slipping on the floor of the parking lot of the World Financial Center, he sent a SkyPage. I know many of you remember SkyPage. From the hospital to all of us, he said, "Don't worry, we're going to get the IPO done in 6 weeks." And 6 weeks later, we did. And when some of our bondholders expressed understandable angst that we had broken some of our bond covenants, Brian referred to it as a small administrative issue that we would resolve. Now, I could keep going. But you see, beyond all of his strategic and operational genius, Brian's basic decency and optimism and loyalty inspired an incredible commitment on the part of all of us who worked for him not to let him down. Whatever Brian expected of us, he expected more of himself. And it wasn't just about work. Our spouses and significant others also loved Brian and Jane because of how they embraced us into their own family. And their pride in their kids, Beth and Tricia and Christian and Mary, was as beautiful as it was always evident. And so, Brian, we are here tonight on behalf of all of those that you touched, all of those that you have taught how to succeed in business and in life while remembering that it is family and the community that matter most. For the young people you helped as the board chair at Covenant House and as trustee of the Scholarship Fund for Inner City Children, for the members of the Catholic Church who were so grateful for all you have done, and for your disciples. And that is, in fact, who we are, your disciples. Whatever good we do in this world is really a reflection of that which we have learned from you. So let me close with this. Brian was a longtime friend of Michael Angelo Saltarelli. They met when Bishop Saltarelli was a leader of the Catholic Church in northern New Jersey. And subsequently, Bishop Saltarelli became the 8th Bishop of Wilmington, Delaware. And we got to know each other over the years, and he died shortly after I became governor. And I visited Bishop Saltarelli at the hospital just days before he had died. And although he was active in the Delaware community, that was not what he wanted to talk about that day. Instead, he asked me to deliver a message to Brian. Brian is a great man, he said, the best. I'm grateful to him for all he does, but more importantly, for who he is. So Brian, thank you for being extraordinary and humble, and for being you. Congratulations.
Morgan O'Brien had a great idea about aggregating a lot of spectrum that was adjacent to some of the cellular spectrum. I didn't know enough to know how hard that would be, but Morgan and I partnered up, and we brought in Brian McAuley, who really, from an operating standpoint, helped build Nextel.
I was born in Brooklyn, lived there until I was about 13. My parents moved to Long Island. From there, I commuted back to Brooklyn to high school, to Bishop Loughlin High School. Went to Adelphi College. I knew I wanted to be in business, but I didn't know in what form. And I said, well, if you're going to be in business, you have to understand the financial statements. The financial statements are the language of business. And so I decided I'd become an accountant. My first involvement in wireless communications was a company called Millicom. Peter Reinheimer was the investment banker for Millicom. That's where I knew him from. And he said, well, Brian, why don't you come to work for me for a little bit of this? I could use some help. He introduced me to Morgan O'Brien. He was, at that time, trying to raise money for a consolidation of the SMR industry. He and Mark Warner were going around to all the major investment banks. And Peter said to Morgan, this is the most interesting business plan I've ever seen. Not a single number in it. You have got to meet this guy, Brian McAuley. And Morgan was the visionary. I was the guy that had to get things done. And as a very small company, at one time I was the CEO, the CFO, the chief marketing officer, chief technology officer, and so forth. FleetCall started out as just SMR. On one trip to a review meeting in Houston, Morgan and I were on the plane, and he's talking, he says, Brian, I have this idea. The cellular industry is coming out with these digital technologies, make it much more efficient and so forth. Why don't we do that? And I sat back and I thought for about 5 minutes, didn't say a word. Morgan was expecting me to give all the reasons why it can't be done. I said, brilliant. That is absolutely brilliant. We should do that. That's what became the Nextel product, the IDEM product. Although our service initially was kind of crappy, it was a lot better than what you get from the analog guys. And that was an important factor of success. There was a mini crisis in the marketplace. We did get a call from Craig McCaw, who said, I like what you guys are doing. I would like to help. I'd like to make an investment. After Craig took over, he wanted to have his own CEO, and I said, Craig, for $1 billion, because he eventually was putting in $1 billion. For $1 billion, you can have your own CEO, whatever you want. When we got to like 23, 25 million subscribers is when Sprint and Nextel came together for a merger of equals, which never works. My latest venture in wireless is Pacific Data Vision, which is developing a state-of-the-art digital push-to-talk radio system. Things I like to do, like I love Sudoku. Again, I'm a numbers guy, right? I like skiing, golf, or archery, or target shooting, or hunting, that sort of stuff. I'm on the Finance Council of the Archdiocese of Newark. I'm Vice Chairman of Catholic Charities in Newark. God, I must have some other things I'm doing, yeah. I figure when I do retire, those are the things I'll use to keep myself busy. The things I enjoy doing most are what people say you can't do. At one of the earlier shareholder meetings for FleetCall, they came in and they saw the big sign up there. The Impossible Company, not the company name, just the Impossible Company. At that point I says, let me explain to you why we have this. One, you won't get the money. Well, we got the money. Second, they said you'll never get towers. All the best towers that take, we got all the towers. That's not a problem. You won't get anybody to build it for you. Motorola's doing a pretty decent job. Fourth and fifth, and I said, and the seventh item, which we haven't done yet, is compete with cellular. But we're going to do that, and then we did.
Without Brian's ability to actualize it, there would have never been a Nextel.
Well, I too know I have to be brief, so I did write a few notes. That way I can stay on track. The first thing I really need to do is to thank the Wireless History Foundation. I'm truly grateful for this honor and for being inducted into the Hall of Fame. Another big thank you is to my friends and associates who came here to celebrate this event with me, especially my very good friend, Morgan O'Brien. Without his incredible vision of what can be, there never would have been a Nextel, nor would there really be a Pacific Data Vision now embarking on a journey to breathe new life into the push-to-talk communications, which everybody thinks is dead, and they're wrong. And we're going to make a dramatic improvement in the way we use the spectrum that we acquired. I spent the past 35 years of my life in business career in the wireless industry, starting with, many people might know this, starting in cellular with Millicom Communications, where we did these initial FCC licenses that you heard a little bit about today, and were involved in that wonderful trading event at the Waldorf Astoria. I did that, then I went into the fleet call Nextel, and then Neo World Communications, and now PDV. I owe special thanks to the entire wireless industry because in those 35 years, I have had more fun than anybody is entitled to. Last night we had a little reception, and the thing that came out incredibly all the time was how much everybody said, gee, we've had so much fun in this industry. And so it really, when you think about it, that's what life is all about. You got to have fun in doing everything you do, or else you should do something else. And yes, there were some disappointments. Some even call those disasters. You heard Jack refer to one or two of them. But as an eternal optimist, which I am, I called them learning experiences and shrugged them off and could hardly remember them. The fun times were numerous and memorable. The fun was doing the impossible. When people say you can't do, it's a challenge. I liked surprising people by being unpredictable. Having a secret business plan that truly was secret. There were no leaks. Everybody was asking us, what are you guys doing? Come on, you're spending too much money to buy these channels. You're going to go bankrupt. I said, well, we kind of know what we're doing, but we did it. And then, by the way, I even had fun on the fundraising trips that you do for money, with these investment bankers. It is such an incredible journey, but it was fun as well. So I'd like to tell you more about the fun, but that would take all night and possibly a couple of days more. The general rule is for any speech to be brief, it has to be brief, especially if you're the last speaker before the cocktail hour. So let me be clear by saying it's been quite a journey. It's not over yet, and I look forward to having a lot more fun. And thank you, thank you, thank you.
And now to close the evening, Wireless History Foundation Director and Hall of Fame member Arlene Harris, President of Dyna LLC.
Well, thank you everyone for coming this evening. It's been another almost philosophical. This has been a group of awardees that have resurrected stories that we just seem to have forgotten, and I hope that you'll respond to Rob's request to start filling us in on these stories, because they truly are amazing. Many of you in the room today are former awardees, and I'd like to call out your attention to those people that have won the award in the past. These are like the awardees that we had this evening, people that really made an enormous difference in what we enjoy today as a wireless experience. So let me start with John Stanton. Would you stand up, John? John. What can I say? John's been wonderful. George Schmitt, who we've heard from this evening. Morgan O'Brien. Nick Hauser. Nick, you here? Sam Ginn. Okay. Brian Fonts. Craig Farrell, I think is. And my better half, Marty Cooper. The reason I wanted to mention these folks again is I wanted you to appreciate the diversity, not necessarily the gender diversity, although Sue's helping that program, but the diversity that we represent in the wireless industry, with awards going to lawyers and engineers and business people and a broad swath of characters, some of whom have been in bitter battle. I mean, if I look down around the tables down here and could tell you some stories, pretty colorful stories about the folks in this room who haven't always been good drinking buddies. But it's really important to understand that the industry is terribly diverse. The History Foundation is trying to stimulate an appreciation for the diversity, the people that it takes underneath all of the hype to make things work. And I think this evening's awardees can give us that appreciation. Probably the most important thing I need to tell you before we close out the evening is that the bar is open for another hour this evening. So I hope you all will get together after we break up the tables here and have a drink together and tell some more stories. And be sure to be back with us next year, because we hope to bring you even another group of wonderful stories and wonderful contributors to the industry, like most of you. Thank you. Good night.